expecting from today's first meeting between Kim and Putin?
Well, Mark, reports say that the two leaders are going to be meeting for about 4 hours. And according to Ushakov, the focus of today's talks will be on finding a diplomatic solution to the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. But like you said, this is the first Pyongyang-Moscow summit in 8 years, the last one being in 2011 with Kim's late father and the former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il meeting with then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. So the leaders are likely to talk about their bilateral issues, especially economic ties, seeing how there are several transportation and economic officials in the Russian delegation, as revealed by TASS news agency. And as much as the summit is seen as Kim Jong-un's effort to seek support from Russia after his summit with President Donald Trump collapsed in Hanoi, the leaders are also likely to discuss the need to ease UN sanctions against the North. Back to you, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much for that report. Jaein, we appreciate that and keep us up to date as we get more news on the big summit today between North Korea and Russia. Very looking forward to seeing President Putin's expression when they first meet myself. Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's right-hand man, who was in charge of the regime's denuclearization with the US, has been removed from his post. Now, this move is expected to bring changes to the North's denuclearization negotiations going forward. Kim Hyo-sun has this report.
North Korea has replaced its top nuclear negotiator Kim Yong-chol, who has been the counterpart to U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He has been replaced by Jang Kim-chol, a member of the North Korean Asia-Pacific Peace Committee. That's according to South Korean lawmaker Lee Hae-hun, who heads the National Assembly's Intelligence Committee, citing a source from Seoul's intelligence agency. Lee explains Kim appears to have been censured after the second North-U.S. summit ended prematurely with no deal. However, Lee also added it's too early to tell whether Kim Yong-chol is completely out of the regime's political picture. Kim Yong-chol's absence in the North's delegation to Russia, accompanying the regime's leader, also raised speculation over his possible replacement. With the replacement of Kim, a hardline military commander, analysts foresee changes in future denuclearization negotiations between Pyongyang and Washington. Some also predict the focus of denuclearization negotiations could now be shifted to the regime's foreign ministry from the ruling party Central Committee's United Front Department, which was formerly headed by Kim Yong-chol. Jang Kim-chol, who is barely known to the outside world, is reportedly in his late 50s and has a career of working for civilian exchanges between the two Koreas. In response to the news, the U.S. State Department has reiterated its stance that it will continue to engage in constructive dialogue with the regime without commenting further. Kim Yong-chol, Arirang News.
The US is flexing its military muscle in the Mediterranean Sea, deploying 2 Nimitz-class aircraft carriers, the USS John C. Stennis and the USS Abraham Lincoln. Now, CNN introduced the operations, explaining it has exclusive access to the 2 carrier strike groups involving several ships and up to 120 aircraft each. These carriers truly are enormous. In a rare move, Washington's ambassador to Russia also took part. The operations are seen as a warning to Russia, which aims to strengthen its influence in the Mediterranean with the deployment of warships to that region. Now, President Jaein is working on giving his peace drive a much-needed shot in the arm, while also closely monitoring the goings-on in Vladivostok. The top office says President Moon will meet with the visiting Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, Nikolai Patrushev. The Russian official, often described as Putin's right-hand man, will also hold talks with Seoul's National Security Advisor, Jong-un. No details have been revealed about the agenda for the talks, but it's largely expected to be about the North Korea-Russia summit. Patrushev is also expected to talk about a possible visit to Seoul by President Putin after President Moon went to Moscow last year. Now, hopes were high for interKorean cooperation after the Panmunjom summit that was held a year ago, but progress has been limited due to restrictions from international sanctions. However, some projects have recently been given the green light. Our Oh Jung-hee tells us more about their prospects.
Last week, the UN Security Council gave a green light to the two Koreas to work together on recovering cultural relics in the north border town of Kaesong at the site of a palace from Korea's ancient Goryeo Dynasty. The most recent joint excavation was late last year. However, researchers could not bring in any equipment from the south due to sanctions. But with the recent UN sanctions waiver, Seoul can now take excavators and trucks across the border.
We conducted the excavation for 50 days last year, but we had to cover a smaller area than we had planned because we didn't have the necessary equipment. We couldn't excavate some parts of the area and had to use our hands. It's good news that we got a sanctions waiver.
Another interKorean project that recently got the go-ahead from the UNSC is the video reunions of families separated by the Korean War. Seoul and Pyongyang held face-to-face reunions last year, which brought together roughly 200 families. But there are still tens of thousands of people on the waiting list, and Seoul's goal is to hold video reunions in addition to the face-to-face reunions. With the granting of the exemption last month, Seoul can send over devices like monitors and camcorders to upgrade the facilities in the north.
We've recently finished purchasing necessary items. We'll discuss with the North on when and how to deliver these.
Despite Seoul's hopes, it is unclear when these interKorean projects will be able to begin in earnest. Since the collapse of the Trump-Kim summit in February, Pyongyang has been lukewarm about communicating with Seoul. North Korea has not responded to South Korea's proposals for working-level talks for the joint excavations in Kaesong, and South Korea has not yet brought up holding video reunions. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
A U.S. citizen accused of involvement in a raid on the North Korean embassy in Madrid has appeared at a court in Los Angeles. The judge denied him bail and blocked a defense request to keep the complaint sealed. Our Jaein has this report.
Christopher An, a former U.S. Marine and U.S. citizen from Southern California, was allegedly a part of a group of dissidents wielding weapons as they stormed the North Korean embassy in Madrid in February. This, according to a criminal complaint released by federal prosecutors on Tuesday. Spain is also seeking to extradite An on charges including robbery, illegal restraint, and criminal organization. During the hearing, attended by his wife, mother, and about 24 supporters, An was denied bail by the judge. The judge also denied a defense request to keep the criminal complaint sealed. Prosecutors say 38-year-old An was arrested during a raid last week at an apartment he shared with co-defendant Adrian Hong, the leader of the Free Joseon group. Hong was not at home during the raid and has not been arrested. Free Joseon is a dissident group focused on toppling the ruling Kim regime in North Korea and has claimed responsibility over the brazen raid at the North Korean embassy in Spain's capital. Court documents indicate prosecutors believe An has a strong incentive to flee as he faces more than 10 years behind bars if extradited and convicted in Spain. He's ordered to return to court for a status hearing on July 18th. 이승재, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's central bank has released its data on real GDP growth for the first quarter of 2019, and it does not paint a pretty picture, to say the least. For more details, let's connect to our business correspondent Kim Hae-sung, who is at the Bank of Korea. Hae-sung, we've known the South Korean economy has been in the doldrums for quite a while now, but this is one of the worst figures we have seen in many years.
That's right, Mark. South Korea's economy actually shrank in the first quarter, declining 0.3% on quarter. This is the worst contraction since the height of the global financial crisis, when the South Korean economy sank 3.3% in the fourth quarter of 2008.
On-year first quarter real GDP expanded 1.8%. This shows government spending failed to keep up the previous quarter's strong pace of 1% amid falling exports and as companies slashed investment. Exports, which account for about half of Korea's GDP, tumbled 2.6% on quarter, a sharper drop than the 1.5% decline in the fourth quarter of last year, mainly on decreases in exports of electrical and electronic equipment like LCDs. Government consumption edged up 0.3% with increased healthcare benefits, but that's still the lowest in about 16 quarters. Capital investment plummeted nearly 11% to a 21-year low due to decreases in machinery and transportation equipment. Construction investment edged down 0.1%. This contraction in GDP growth mark came as quite a shock to the market, as most economists had expected a slight rise. In fact, the Korean won weakened this morning, hitting a two-year high of 1,161 against the greenback. Led by Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi, economy-related ministers, including the Trade Minister and Labor Minister, are holding a meeting at the government complex right now to assess the GDP numbers and come up with measures. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Mark.
Well, thank you very much for that report, Haesung, and those ministers really do have quite the daunting task on their hands. Now, the ruling Democratic Party of Korea and three minor opposition parties will try to designate key reform bills as fast-track legislation. Today, the special parliamentary committees for political and judicial reform will convene to fast-track the bills, one on electoral reform and the other to create a body to investigate high-ranking government and public officials. However, it is unclear when the votes will take place. The main opposition, Liberty Korea Party, which is very heavily against the fast track, has been occupying the venues where the meetings will be held. Objection is also expected from some minor opposition Bareunmirae Party lawmakers. Their leadership is seeking to replace a committee member who said he would vote against the fast track. Without that Bareunmirae Party vote, the fast track deal won't have enough support to pass. Now, media outlets in France are reporting that a discarded cigarette butt might have started the inferno that destroyed the iconic Notre-Dame Cathedral in Paris. Not destroyed it, but destroyed large parts of it. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Hong Yu. So give us the latest.
Well, Mark, a scaffolding firm that had been working on the roof of Notre Dame has admitted some of its workers had smoked on the site, but added that in no way a cigarette butt could have caused the blaze. The company informed the police that its workers smoked sometimes despite a smoking ban on the site. During the process of the investigation, 7 cigarette butts have been found near the origin of the blaze. The scaffolding company said it was impossible to set a log on fire with the lit cigarette butt, and there is no chance the material used in the cathedral could have been burned from it. Other possibilities include electric incidents at one of the 2 elevators on the site and electrical wiring running through the roof of the cathedral. The Paris prosecutor's office says it's not ruling out any possibilities. French President Emmanuel Macron has pledged to rebuild Notre Dame within 5 years, and France's government has presented a bill aiming at speeding up the reconstruction process. This bill will allow the government to pass emergency orders regarding Notre Dame and skip some ordinary renovation procedures. Some architects and heritage experts, however, have expressed concerns about the quality of the work that will be done. The bill will move to Parliament for approval in the coming weeks. Netflix and other streaming services will not face a tougher road to the Oscars next year, as their movies will still be eligible for the Academy Awards. The Academy of Motion and Picture Arts and Science voted to leave a key rule on eligibility unchanged. The rule allows any films on streaming services to be considered for an Oscar as long as they have been screening for at least 7 days in a Los Angeles theater. The Academy's president said they plan to further study the profound changes occurring to their industry and continue discussions about these issues. The World Health Organization has issued its first guideline for kids' exposure to electronic screens, including smartphones. The guideline says children younger than a year old should not be exposed to any electronic screens, while those aged 2 to 4 should have no more than 1 hour of screen time a day. Such activities include playing computer games and with smartphones or watching TV. The WHO says kids who spend too much time playing with smartphones may be at risk of attention problems. The latest guideline comes amid growing research into the developmental effects of the widespread use of electronics by children.
Thank you as always to our Hong Yu for the world news. Now it's time for our Life and Info segment where we focus on information that's hopefully useful for your everyday life. Today we're going to introduce the Korean folk village. It is located in Yongin, Gyeonggi-do province, and this is where visitors can see and feel what South Korea was like hundreds of years ago. You won't find a place better. The Korean folk village is hosting Joseon Cultural Festival, and I'm happy to say we have our Kan Hyung-woo in the studio. Hyung-woo, it's your first time. Welcome. It's a
Thanks for
pleasure to
having
have
me.
you. Tell us more about this festival.
So, Mark, the name of the festival is Welcome to Joseon. And the Joseon era was a dynastic kingdom that lasted for about 500 years, from the late 1300s to the late 1800s. At the Korean folk village, the setting is already in the Joseon style with old architectures and props. On top of that, there are also actors dressed in traditional clothes of local government officer, 사또, women trained as professional singer, dancer, and companion for men, 기생, and many more in Korean traditional clothes, hanbok. The actors and actresses behave just like the characters from the Joseon era while actively interacting with visitors.
Well, that looks very interesting. If you ignore everyone else who isn't one of the actors, you can imagine you're going back in time somewhat there, and sounds like a really enjoyable way to spend a few hours or perhaps the whole day itself. But what should visitors expect to experience when they go to the Korean folk village?
So they offer a lot of different performances, but before we get into that, I have to talk about the scenery. The scenery there is wonderful, and you can soak in all the authentic beauty of old Korea there. Let's get some reviews from the visitors I met there yesterday.
Just so many programs, there's so many things. The nature here is very nice too. The air here is nice. So yeah, it's a very nice place to come. And I feel like every foreigner who comes to Seoul must come to the Korean folk village to kind of like have an experience here. Yeah.
It's been fun and educational. It's nice. You get to kind of go through the traditional layout of how Korea used to be, and the food's good too.
The Korean folk village offers a number of performances for visitors. One of the most exciting events is the equestrian feats, where professional riders put on a show by displaying how the horse riders used to train back in the Joseon Dynasty. They also have a traditional wedding ceremony to show how people got married in the past. While everyone dresses in traditional clothes, the bride and groom take off on their honeymoon in the old-fashioned way. And there is this concert to celebrate the birth of local governor. And what's interesting about it is that the performance dance to EDM music and play percussion instruments.
Okay, so they mix EDM music with Joseon Dynasty role play, which is very interesting indeed. Yeah. Truly a mix of modern and the past. Must be a lot of fun, and the wedding ceremony reminds me a lot of my own wedding, because I don't know whether you know, Hyung-woo, but I actually had a traditional Korean wedding.
Oh,
where
you did?
I had to do the bow and everything like that. But are there any fun, hands-on experiences? A lot of the time, these kind of places do have them for visitors, so can we try a few things out ourselves?
In fact, they do, and I actually brought the stamp that I did yesterday. So they have this stamp tour, and As you can see, there are 20 empty slots here.
So you got all the stamps?
Yes, they're obviously filled because I went there yesterday to get them all.
Did you actually do the activities or they just stamped it for you?
I actually did, and you're going to see that in the video really soon. So there are two ways to get these stamps marked down, and one of them is that you can try out different costumes from the Joseon Dynasty, including like what you wore, traditional wedding clothes and officers' outfits. But if you want to try on these costumes, you have to pay 3,000 won, which is a bit less than $3.
Yeah.
Or you could buy a picnic lunchbox and a mat to get the stamps. So once you have collected all of them, you will be given a hoppe, an identification tag used during the Joseon Dynasty.
Right.
So you might wonder, why do I need to pay for this? But this was an actual practice of reaching social upper class back in the Joseon era. So this is what hoppe looks like.
Right.
I got this from yesterday at the Korean folk village after I filled up all the stamps. It says VIP 양반. 양반 means those who were in the upper ruling class during the Joseon Dynasty. So for those who were in the lower class back then, they could go around and buy this identification tag and lift up their social standing.
Wow, so I'm in the presence of a VIP this morning. I'm honored that you've made the jump from lower class to upper class.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, but it's very interesting. I've never actually heard about this place properly, and I've lived in Korea for many years, and I'm sure my children would love a chance
they would love to go.
To be a VIP in particular. But lastly, any tips you'd like to give our viewers if they want to go, like myself, and visit the Korean folk village?
So given that it's a very large place that covers about 1 square kilometer, and most performances take place outside, so you should definitely check the weather before you decide to go, because if it rains, it's highly likely that they're going to cancel all the outdoor performances.
Oh, I see.
So the Korean Folk Village's Welcome to Joseon Festival runs through June 23rd, and it is located in, as you mentioned earlier, Yongin, Gyeonggi-do Province, which is about a 30-minute drive from Seoul. The venue opens every day from 9:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. in April and to 6:30 p.m. in May and June. The weekend hours are extended by 30 minutes, so you have some extra time to visit there. The regular admission fee for adults is 20,000 won, about $17. You might say it's a bit expensive, but they offer a number of promotions to give you discounts. So for more information, you should check out their official website.
Wonderful. Well, $17 is nothing to a VIP like you, Hyung-woo, so don't worry too much about it. Wonderful reporting, very informative, and genuinely, I'm very interested to go and check it out thanks to your report. So thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Good morning. Well, showers are on the way for most areas from this afternoon. The central and Gyeongsang-do regions will see 5 to 30 millimeters of rainfall into tomorrow morning, while mountainous regions in Gangwon-do province could see rain turning to snow. And starting from the west around lunch hour, rain will gradually spread to the rest of the country, and it's likely to rain through tomorrow morning. And when the skies open, the rain could come along with thunder and lightning, so be aware. Now, the showers will bring down the temperatures a touch today, so please beware. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Okay, that's all we have for now. More news at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.
I'm a professional chef specialized in Korean food,